what the did we do before you could look shit up on Google?
Bob, you did what I did. You made shit up.
Yeah,
Wes does a whole podcast based on that.
Google has screwed a lot of bullshitters, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I became a good boy. I became a people pleaser. Truth is, as I look back on it, I was miserable. I went to a party with some hip, slick, and cool people, and out came a mirror and out came some white powder, and I just took the straw and did a line, and I can remember that moment today. Addiction is an outside solution for an inside job, and I found my outside solution.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Recovery Crew podcast here at Deep Waters Recovery. I'm Dr. Bob Baer, and today we have Dr. Scott Basinger, who is a wise dude, as well as having a lot of recovery. And in this world, we call him an old timer, but he's one of those young, spirited guys that just comes from a place of a really good heart and openness. And he's, he's kind of the guy you want to be. I'm aspiring to be like Scott. Okay, so we're going to have fun today. Welcome to the Deep Waters here. This movement is about healing trauma. It's about letting go of the dependencies and launching into that life that we've all longed for, right? And we do it in community here. So glad you're here. Welcome to the Deep Waters. Okay, well, here we are again. There's Wes Shepard, Scott Basinger. I'm going to get that last name right after 30 years. How many years now? I can't even
30.
count. Huh? 30. So somewhere.
30.
Huh? Yeah. So, but Scott and I go to meetings where we don't say the last name a whole bunch anyway. So I haven't had that much practice. But anyway. Welcome to the Recovery Crew, everybody. Wes Shepard is our co-host. Hello, Wes.
Hey, Dr. Bob, how are you?
I'm all right today because I have my old friend and a wise guy and a wise person, Scott Basinger, with us today. Hey, Scott, welcome.
Hey, Bob, and hey, Wes. Really good to be here.
Hey,
All
Scott.
right. And he has wainscoting on his, this is a trivia question for everybody. There's wainscoting in his background, but I thought wainscoting was only horizontal. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that he has vertical stripes on his wall. And we don't know quite whether we can call it wainscoting or not. And who the hell is Wayne anyway, by the way? All right. So that's very important. I'm glad you tuned in today to hear me ramble about that shit. So, okay, I'm going to introduce Scott here in a minute, but I want to invite Nicole Chargois, the program manager here at Deep Waters Recovery, and she's going to let you folks know how to get a hold of us and what we're up to here. Hi, Nicole.
Hey, Bob. Thanks. Yeah, Nicole here, program manager at Deep Waters Recovery. We are an advanced recovery and healing experience for men and women. We have an online program, it's 10 hours a week, 3 groups per week. Please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Our number is 512-677-7847. And if you want to email me directly, my email is admin, ADMIN, @deepwatersrecovery.com. And please reach out. Our website is deepwatersrecovery.com. We post weekly blogs from our community. Our podcast, The Recovery Crew, comes out weekly. And you can follow us on all the social media sites, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So please reach out. Again, the number is 512-677-7847.
Look at that. You have the phone number memorized, don't you? You weren't even having to look at it. Wow, good.
Nope, not anymore.
Nobody memorizes phone numbers anymore because we just press on the person's name in the phone. So, all right. What's the world come to? I have caught myself saying that shit recently. What is this world? It's I have an 18-year-old daughter who looks at me like, really? Are you saying that right now? All right. So welcome here, Scott. Wes and I are going to just love on you and appreciate you. And we're going to give you a space to tell your story, brother. I've been wanting to get you on here for a while. And, but let me do, you have a resume that's even longer than mine. And I don't know if that's a result of all of the great shit that you've done in your life, or you're just old like me. I think it has to do with when you get to be this old, there's more to tell. So, anyway, I'm going to do the short version, brother, even though it's not. So Dr. Scott served Baylor College of Medicine in so many different ways. I'm only going to mention a couple of them. Multiple roles: educator, medical researcher, program director, fundraiser, student counselor and advisor, and dean of the Graduate School of Biomedical Services. Everybody take a breath. How can you do that in one lifetime? But that was he's also the founding executive director of the Hope and Healing Center, which in his bio, they don't say much about it, but has helped so many people in so many ways. It's based in Houston, but also connected to so many other communities, and one of those extremely generous outfits that is just trying to help people get sober and live a good life, not trying to make a fortune, trying to help people heal. So he's the chair of the Baylor College of Medicine Substance Abuse Assistance Council and chair of the advisory board of the Council on Alcohol and Drugs in Houston, which is now the Council, where he was the director of education for the Center for Recovering Families for over a decade. The Center for Recovering Families is legendary.
Mary Bell
started that, and it's really the through line from the Meadows, the old school Meadows in Wickenburg, Arizona. That's a lot of stuff that is the advanced version of recovery, the really deep, wider version that's for everybody, kind of was birthed out of the Meadows, and then the birthing continued through the Center for Recovering Families. Wouldn't you say that, Scott?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love hearing Mary's name mentioned by people in meeting after meeting after meeting.
Yep.
I got my start. I got my gift from Mary. Mary's daughter, Abby, went on to carry on her work. So,
Yep. And Abby's been very influential in a lot of the processes that are related to the family work that I've done. Anyway, we'll talk more about all that. So Scott's been on many boards and of many nonprofit addiction centers, and recipient of many awards, including the Pace Setter Award from the Cancer League, the Vision Award from Cornerstone, the Lifetime Service Award from Lifeway, and many more. His main interests these days are research into teen addiction, and of course his own kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. You have great grandchildren yet? No.
Just great.
Okay, great. All right. He's also a sailor and a traveler, which I want you to say something about that before we're done here. Anyway, Scott, thanks so much for showing up, all that you've done in your life, but mostly thanks on behalf of the universe. Thank you for staying sober all this time, and welcome here. And we're just going to give you space to tell us your story, brother. Go for it.
Well, thanks, Bob. And hi again, Wes. Welcome to recovery, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Getting started is tough, but it's a gift. So basically, my story is one of it's very personal to me. It's a story of resurrection. It's a story of reconciliation. A story of a journey into spirituality, and it began, not surprisingly, shortly after I was born. I was born right in the middle of the Second World War. I know I don't look that old, but very shortly after I was born, my father left, and he enlisted in the Navy, and he was not missing, but he served for 2 years, and he was away from home. So I lived with my mother, and my mother was an alcoholic and had a lot of depression. I think she felt abandoned by her husband, and so she surrogated me, and we had some really rough times when it was just me and Mom. I felt very lonely. I learned later that I had developed a fear of abandonment. I invented a imaginary friend named Bobby. Could have been named after the great Bob Bear, who knows? But I remember sitting alone and lonely in my home while my mother smoked or drank or napped. She did a lot of napping. There were a couple suicide attempts. And I really didn't feel comfortable until my father came back about 2.5 years later, and finally my sister was born, who became my best friend. An incident showing that level of abandonment, one time when I was about 5 or 6, my parents went out every Wednesday night and every Saturday night. They would go out to dinner and have cocktails with friends. And we had a sitter, an older woman named Mrs. Varney. And one night, I don't remember whether it was Wednesday or Saturday, but they were leaving. And I went to the front door to watch them depart. And the car backed out of the driveway and it turned onto Ohio Street where I lived. And it started to accelerate away. And I pushed through the screen door and ran after the car. And I caught up with the car and I started knocking on the window of the car. And I'm just pouring tears out of my eyes. And the car stops and my mother rolls down the window. And she said, "Honey, what's wrong?" And through my tears, I said, "Bring me a Hershey bar." And I learned later from a great therapist that that was a contract that I made with Mom. I felt as a child that they were going to leave and not come back. So if I could contract with them to bring me something home, then I knew they would come back. Mm. So that's what launched this incredible attempt year after year to try to feel normal, to try to literally find some way of feeling safe. So I became a good boy. I became a people pleaser. I got all A's in school. I went to my daddy's prep school. I was a pretty damn fair second baseman for the Little League All-Star team. I was first in my first communion class. Just a good boy. And tried to play the piano like Daddy wanted and play the violin like Mommy wanted. And truth is, as I look back on it, I was miserable. When I went to boarding school, I met some guys who I wanted to be like. They smoked, they drank, they womanized, they had Playboy magazines. And in a very short couple of years, I decided this good boy stuff was for other people, for wussies and pussies. So finishing prep school and then going to college and joining a fraternity just gave me an incredible growth opportunity in becoming a growing alcoholic. I learned early on that when I felt real anxiety, alcohol would settle my feelings. And my drinking increased literally exponentially through college. Had a lot of trouble while I was at university. Ended up getting proposed to by a lovely young woman who called me after we had had an encounter, and she said, "I need to talk to you." And I said, "What?" She said, "I'm pregnant." So the gift of that encounter, which actually happened in the basement of the fraternity house, was my son, my firstborn, who he and I are sailing buddies to get together today, and he's my best friend. And shortly after that, we had our second child, and believe it or not, having children and getting serious about education and what I was going to do the rest of my life sort of sobered me up. So for much of the decade of the 60s, while I was working on my doctoral degree, I probably led a lot more of a normal lifestyle. Finished my PhD, went on to California, to UCLA to do a fellowship, got promoted to the faculty out there. My research was going exceptionally well. I was gaining a name. I was actually feeling pretty good, feeling pretty proud of myself, but there was always that background of drinking. And after 10 years of marriage, I decided that pretty much I was the one who decided that we needed to end the marriage, and we did so. And when I look back on that, she's still alive and we're close friends, but there's just no way I can make amends for the selfish and self-centered husband that I was. So by then I had moved to Houston. I was promoted to tenure at Baylor College of Medicine. I had received a number of grants. I had some major publications. And I was literally at the pinnacle of my career, and I decided, it's time for me to have some fun. And coincidentally with that decision, I went to a party with some hip, slick, and cool people, and out came a mirror and out came some white powder. And I had never been introduced to cocaine, but rather than embarrass myself by saying, what's that? And, what'll it do? I just took the straw and did a line. And I can remember that moment today. That was probably 1978 or 1979. And it just had a huge impact on me. I had found my medication. Addiction is an outside solution for an inside job. And I found my outside solution. So I married Lady Cocaine. I chased cocaine for many, many, many years. In the process, I descended into pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Cocaine has a wonderful effect upon some of us as it makes us hypersexual. And I began to live this incredibly hedonistic lifestyle. I was trying to get as much cocaine and as much sex as I could get. And it was telling on me, obviously. I was ignoring my career. About 1986, I started ignoring my mortgage. I needed that mortgage money to pay my drug dealer. My home became foreclosed. There was a sheriff who came to my house on a daily basis trying to evict me from my home, and I would hide from him. And
can you picture that, Russ? Can you even picture it with Mr. Nice Guy Scott?
No. I was just thinking to myself, it's great for us in recovery to hear stories like Scott's, because when you get down on yourself and you say, oh, I'm just lazy, I'm just a loser, I blah blah this and that, and here you have a guy who's gone through has all these accolades and has the exact same disease as us. It's not, it helps to kind of to take some of that self-pity away, that hey, look at this guy, he has the same exact thing as me, and look at what he's done. And it's not just I just can't do it. It's not a matter of willpower, it's the addiction. So
even Scott's a mess.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Boy, was he a mess. But underneath all this, and you guys know this, underneath all this was that constant subconscious drumming of, you're not good enough, you're a phony, they're going to find out. Those papers you published, those were other people's work. By the way, they weren't. But
let's get that in there.
Yeah. So so by the end of 1987, I was not showing up at work. There were some of my academic friends were trying to do casual interventions on me by saying things like, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? And I gave the standard answer, I'm fine. I'm fine, everything's okay. And they'd say, well, what's wrong? And I'd make up excuses. One thing I'm still embarrassed about, I kept telling them that my kids were in jail. My kids were in college, and I was a single father. And I said, my kids are in jail. And they'd go, oh, well, we're so sorry.
That's a good one.
They'd leave me alone for a while.
I'm going to have to remember that one just in case I need it. All right.
Yeah, it works. Yeah. So a colleague of mine who I will love as a brother forever, I'll give you his name. His name is Robert Mark. He's a professor at the medical school in Salt Lake City in Utah. But he had an alcoholic wife who was in recovery, and he knew about interventions, and he arranged an intervention for me, and I didn't show up, and he arranged the second one and I didn't show up. So he flew one of my professors from UCLA in to give a seminar. And everybody called me the day before and said, "Oh, Scott, you've got to be at this seminar. Dr. Hall is flying in from UCLA, and he's going to talk about your work. And, you know, your work is so important, and everybody will get to hear your work." And I'm saying in my head, I said, damn, I said, do I really have to get up and go to this seminar? And for whatever reason, I woke up that morning and in a rush, did the quick shower and ran off. And when I got to the room in the medical school where the talk was going to occur, it was in a huge cantilevered auditorium. And there was probably 450 people in the room, and there was one chair, front row center, surrounded by my friends, and they all yelled at me, "Scott, Scott, come here, we saved you a chair, we saved you a chair." So I dragged my sorry ass in and sat down in the chair and sat there and listened to Professor Hall talk about the work we did together at UCLA. And at the end of the seminar, after all the questions and answers, my mind said, how the hell can I get out of here? I'm just going to slip away and go back home and go get some more drugs and continue my miserable lifestyle. Well, at that point, one of the administrative assistants ran in the room, waving one of those pink sheets of paper that you put phone messages on. And she was saying, "Dr. Basinger, Dr. Basinger, I have a very important phone call for you. Very important phone call." Well, I immediately puffed up and I said to my friends, I said, "Excuse me, I have a very important phone call. I have to take it." And they said, "Well, that's great. We'll go with you." So they led me down the hall following her, and we got to a room, and I felt a hand on my back, and I was pushed into the room. The door closed, it was locked, and I walked into my own intervention. And the four of my closest, dearest friends who were there to save my life were telling stories about how they knew how sick I was, how they knew about my cocaine habit, how they could not stand by and watch me kill myself. There were tears. They were slinging snot all over the room. They had actually stacked furniture against the window, against the slim possibility, at least to me, that I would leap through the window to my death. I'm still a little bit offended by that. In any case,
not that far down the scale.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case, they said, "We're worried about you. We're worried about your health. Will you go to the hospital?" I asked the question that I've done 150 interventions since my own, and I will ask, everyone always asks, "Well, how long do I have to stay?" So they said, "Well, we'll just check you out medically." So I got in the car and went off to West Oak Psychiatric Hospital on leap year day, February 29th, 1988. And I had used the night before, of course, so I made March 1st, 1988 as my date of sobriety. Was in a unit with 21 other crazy new addicts and immediately hated it. I wanted out. I didn't like the rules. I saw these big banners with steps and God and everything else on them. And the hardest part, Bob, was the fact they didn't know who I was. They didn't call me Dr. Basinger, and they didn't revere me like the way I expected to be treated. And for the next, literally for the next 2 weeks, I became alone and lonely and isolated in that treatment center, excuse me. I sat alone at meetings. I sat alone during the day. And one night, it was March 16th, I was at the meeting at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. in the cafeteria. And I said, during the moment of silence, I said a prayer, the first prayer I had said since I was 14 years old. During that moment of silence, I said, I don't know why. I said, God, help the people at this meeting and help them help me. And the next morning I woke up and my attitude, my outlook, my belief in myself, my belief in recovery, my willingness, my honesty, my open-mindedness had completely changed. And in that spiritual awakening that evening at 7:10 p.m. in the West Oaks cafeteria began my recovery.
So you had one of those mild burning bush experiences, huh?
Yeah, yes. The other significant thing in early recovery for me, and I'll switch on to being in recovery. About week 4, we had family week, and my daughter, who I adore, she carries the emotional tone in our family. She came to family week, and we were doing an exercise. Back in 1988, they had lots of bells and whistles when you were in rehab treatment, and this particular family program was called Emotional Arts. So we're in a room with about 60 people. It's the addicts and their loved ones. And the assignment is to build using construction paper and crayons and magic markers and cutout paper and stuff, build an example, build a platform showing what your family is like. So we all got busy, and I went over and I took a flat piece of paper and I put a big circle in the middle. That was me. And I put little dots beside me, and those were my kids. And I put a dot up in the corner. That was my ex-wife. And I was very proud of myself at this artistic creation. When it was our turn, the therapist said, Scott and Brooks, that's my daughter, what do you have? And I stepped in the middle of the room and held up my paper and said, this is me, and these are my children, and that's my ex-wife. And it got the same kind of reaction that it's getting from Wes right now, like, what the hell? I stepped back and my daughter stepped out, and she had created out of black, probably 10 by 14 construction paper, a black box, as big as, say, 3 packs of cigarettes put together. And on the top of the box, she had put yards and yards and yards of multicolored ribbon that she had stripped so it curls up. And she poked a little hole in the box. So she stepped in front of the room and held up this box and streamed the ribbon through her hands and said, this is my father. This is all his bullshit. And then she turned the box and looked in the little hole, and she started to cry, and she said, I've been trying to see inside him all of my life. She broke down, I broke down, and from that moment on, there was no chance of doing anything other than being in recovery.
Yeah.
I saw the deep wound that I had created. I was recapitulating my own childhood.
Isn't it stunning how much we can't see when we're in our disease? And even after we get it out of our system, we still have blinders on about the way that we show up. Yeah?
Yep. And still do today, Bob.
Yeah, likewise.
That's what I said before we started recording. I said, I crossed the line with a really dear friend last night and had to wake up this morning and make amends because I was convinced I was right. So, yeah. Any rate, I started going to meetings. I went to 434 meetings my first year. I had a contract. I had to go to a meeting a day. I had to be drug tested. I had to sign into work. I had a very, very rigid contract from the medical school for 2 years. Went into therapy. I did Jungian analytical therapy Freudian analytical therapy, and then family system therapy with a dear friend named Greg M., who many of us know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And began a wonderful journey in recovery, and that has continued for 32 and over 32 and a half years. As I look back and I looked at the hedonistic lifestyle that I led, how I had lost my moral compass, and I began to understand what was behind that. And I just urge everyone who starts in recovery to have the courage not to look at alcohol as the problem, or not to look at cocaine as the problem, but alcohol and drugs were the solution. Mm-hmm. They were my medication. They were my coping behavior. They allowed me to cope with that inside job of feeling abandoned.
Yeah.
So over the years, about 1993, I was part of somebody else's intervention. I went off and took intervention training from the Johnson Institute, took a booster course a couple years later, I developed an intervention practice, which I'm now winding down, but because it saved my life, I love doing interventions. The other part of my recovery that is just essential is my spiritual growth. I came in with a completely blank slate. I was raised a good little Catholic boy and abandoned the church when I was 14. Going through puberty changed me to the point where I didn't want to do what the church thought was the right thing for little boys to do. So by the time I got to private school, I was introduced to hedonism and cigars and Playboy. So the first higher power that I sort of called my own was actually the statue of Abraham Lincoln. I realized through therapy that I had a tremendous, not only an abandonment wound, but a father wound. My father was gone, and even when he was home, my father was a great man, a great surgeon, my hero. But as an obstetrician gynecologist, he was gone literally 16 hours a day. And he played golf on the weekends and watched football on Sundays. So to repair this father wound, my first higher power was the Abraham Lincoln. I wanted to go climb up on the statue and get in Abe's arms and just know that my little boy was safe. So that was 32 years ago. In the intervening years, my higher power has become, I now call my higher power COAT, C-O-A-T, creator of all things. And I get my probably the most serenity I've ever felt in my life is on the bow of a sailboat in a cove under a night sky, laying on my back, just knowing that I am insignificant in this world, and yet for some reason I'm also an individual, and I'm important to my higher power. So I got remarried in recovery. I married a Jungian psychoanalytical therapist who Bob knows.
My God. Oh my God.
Oh my God. And
it's everywhere in your life.
That's right. And we were married for 6 years, and it was the greatest growth I have had in my 30 years of recovery. Mm-hmm. She didn't know it, but she married a little boy who had not yet grown up. And an example of that, a story I love to tell. I came home one day and I parked in the garage behind the house and came through the back door. And on the kitchen counter, there was a bag of Pepperidge Farms Milano cookies sitting there. And she was somewhere else in the house, and she was reading one of her Jungian tomes. And so I reached in, I had a Pepperidge Farm cookie, and I had a second Pepperidge Farm cookie. And I came out into the room and walked into the living room, and she looks up over her glasses and she says to me, "How many cookies did you have?" And I said, "None." And she just literally rolled her eyes in disgust and went back to the book. Realized, when I really thought through that and talked about it in therapy, I just realized that once again, I didn't marry, I married my mother, and in my marriage, I felt like a little boy. So
Yeah.
we got divorced in 2000. I've been single ever since. My sponsor says I'm unmarriageable. That may be the case. But I'm proud of my recovery. I went from drug addict at Baylor College of Medicine to dean at Baylor College of Medicine. I love the people I've been able to work with. And, it's to have the background I have and to have the intervention training I have and to have the recovery experience I have has been a gift for me. So I think that's about all of Scott Basinger's recovery story.
Nice. You're going to stick to it? And you're sticking to it.
I am sticking to it, yeah.
Thanks, Scott. Lots of juicy stuff in there. One of the things you talked about that we talk a lot about at the Braveheart Experience, which is a weekend thing that we do out at the Last Resort Treatment Center that you know about, but I'm saying that for our listeners. That we talk about a lot. A lot of men come into this work. A lot of people come into the work of healing and recovery saying this phrase, "I'm from a good family."
Yeah.
Right. Which means I don't have anything to work on. It's like shorthand for I don't have anything to look at. Right. And, I am from a great family. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of really bad shit in my childhood, except there were moments when I was really vulnerable that some stuff happened that hurt and it's still stuck in my body. And I got on kind of a trajectory. Some of it is around abandonment. It is. And it's nothing about our people. It's nothing about them. Mine are gone, brother. Mine are gone. It's still in my head though. Right. Yes. And so I have to work on it. So I heard you say, so you want to say a little bit more about that? We don't blame our addiction on our childhood abandonment, neglect, or whatever the version of trauma it is. We don't blame it on, but it, like you said, it got the drugs and alcohol got us here. But can you say just a little bit about how that plays into the healing process?
I can, and I'm glad you brought that up. There is no doubt in my mind, and I suspect this for the Bear family, but I know it for the Basinger family. My mother and father did not wake up early in the morning, close the bedroom door, and have a secret meeting and say, all right, what can we do to really screw this kid up today?
Deep right.
There was nothing intentional about this. One of the things that helped me with this is I did John Bradshaw's Rescuing Your Inner Child repeatedly. Thanks to Mary Bell, but I love my parents, and they're long gone. My mother was brilliant, taught me how to read. I revere my parents. As an alcoholic, I understand her pain. I know her family side. I know where she came from. There's a moment at the end of the Bradshaw experience where you take your little inner child by the hand and you're leaving your home. And as you leave to go to your happy place, you walk by your family sitting at wherever they're sitting. But you don't see them as adults. You see them as the wounded children they were.
Yeah.
And I know my father's wounds, and I know my mother's wounds. My father was a doctor in the Navy and had just a horrible time patching up his fellow sailors through the Pacific, and something he could never talk about, a big secret.
Yep, and we pass it along, right? Until we cough up those old traumatic hairballs. We're doing healing for more than just ourselves and our immediate family. It's it gets a little bit woo woo when we start talking about healing generational wounds. But you and I have been doing this long enough to know that my dad got a lot more shit than I got. And I think we're doing healing for more than just ourselves. Yeah. Wes is from a good family too, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
good,
great,
Wes.
great family.
Great
Just
family.
no emotional, no love at all. That was it. That was the only thing.
Yeah.
If Wes is like me, and for certain like Bob, there's a combination of genetic factors that makes us very sensitive little boys.
Yeah.
And if we don't get the nurturing, if we don't get the love, if we're expected to perform, or if we're expected to be Dr. Basinger's son, or Mr. Shepard's son, or God forbid,
I'll never live up to Bob Bear
never.
Sr. Oh my God.
No. And so the seed is planted, the not good enough is planted, the people pleasing begins, searching for something to make me feel better, and you chase it until it brings you to your knees. And then you have that wonderful spiritual choice of either you're going to follow the program, or you're going to go deeper into a bottom than I would ever want to go. So I love my family. My own children are in their 50s. They're both hugely successful. They're wonderful. They early on, when they were in college, they had their drinking days. But the only other person in my family who was struck by our family system was my sister. She was 15 years sober when she died 2 years ago of pancreatic cancer, and she became my best friend. I got to do her intervention. And we went to meetings together literally all over Ohio, all over Texas, all over the Caribbean. We used to vacation together. So it's both nature and nurture, and you better deal with both.
Yeah. Yeah.
How, what you said is completely true of my story. My grandfather, All-American football player, played for Penn State. Father, held the basketball record, got a basketball scholarship, just big shadows. And that feeling of living up to that was constant, and I knew just looking in the mirror that I probably never would be able to. Where did you start? I mean, where did you find the starting place of telling yourself that I am, I can live up to those expectations, and I don't have to be that person, and I don't have to, fill those shoes because, society tells me that I need to. Everyone, or at least that's what I'm telling myself, that, if I'm not, 6'3" or whatever, have a basketball scholarship, that kind of stuff, then I've failed. If I don't make as much money, then I've failed. And that's just stuff I put on myself, of course. But where did you start in that quest to feel okay with all that stuff?
Well, the seed of healing came in that moment when I said the prayer on March 16th, 1988. Right. But I want to pay a deep respect to the program. The program taught me through the steps. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. That I didn't have to be my father. I didn't have to be Dr. Basinger. I didn't have to be my brilliant mother. I could be me. And that opportunity to use the program and use the fellowship and use the intuition that God was pushing me forward into to develop, I love that the chips in AA that we get not only have the Serenity Prayer on the back, which I revere, but they have a quote around the top of the chip on the front. It says, "To thine own self be true."
Yeah.
And I would urge every single person beginning in recovery to find their true self. If you're young and you've been pushed toward do what daddy does or do what mommy does, and you don't want to do that, then don't do that. If you want to buy a guitar and go start a garage band, do it.
Oh, there's a lot of money in that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, a lot of money in
art.
that.
Oh,
And don't tell your family I said that.
Go get a real job, Basinger.
Yeah.
To thine own
So,
self be true. To thine own self be true. By Aristotle said it, then Shakespeare, and now Scott Basinger has said it. So now we know that this is the compass from which we should lead our lives.
Francis Yeager used to say AA, or the program, is a school for living.
Yeah, that's
and you
right.
heard my Pepperidge Farm cookie story. I mean, I'm 77 years old, but I didn't start growing up until I was well into recovery.
Yeah, and we're still wondering. We all sort of stand off to the side. Jesus, when's he going to grow up?
Yeah, exactly.
I got a book here that says how to grow. What is it? How to be an adult? How to become an adult? Oh, I don't know where it is, but I'm reading how to become an adult. And then when I'm done with this life, I'll get the next one. It's like this onion that we're only going to get 1% of the layers off of. Anyway, all right, we're getting there where I want to close this, and I don't want to. I'd like to spend the rest of the day here with you, Scott. But there's one thing you have so much experience with. I'd like there's a lot of us that have people in our lives that have addictions, and we want to go get them and tell them to stop. Right? Stop doing that before you die. And actually, they are dropping like flies right now. The increase in the increase in the rates of relapse and overdoses is up like I don't know what the percentage, but it's a lot. Treatment centers and drug dealers are doing well during these days. Yeah. So here's the deal. I can't get anybody to do anything, right? So, which is the essence of what? If just briefly, could you say what's the difference between a bad intervention and a good intervention?
Well, a bad intervention is done without any planning, any education at all. Addiction, in every case that I've ever seen, is a family disease.
Yeah.
And whoever the close loved ones are, need recovery first.
Yeah.
And I will not work with a family, and I won't work with a client until I've worked with a family. I have them read Deborah Jay's book called No More Letting Go. I have them look at an intervention guideline that I send to them. I meet with them. I give a little lecture on Alcoholism 101.
Yeah.
We talk about boundaries. I remind them about the 4 C's. They didn't cause it. They can't control it. They can't cure it, but they sure as hell can contribute to it. Mm-hmm. And when I feel like they really understood that enabling over and over again, here, son, here's $20 for gas, and it goes right up his nose. Yep, which was
done out of love.
Yes.
But then they got addicted to doing it.
All right.
That's right.
So when the family is in reasonably good shape, then we'll plan the intervention, and we'll send send the bad boy or the bad girl.
Thank you, because this disease, as the three of us know, and probably the people around us know, is so well, in the book, cunning, baffling, and powerful. It is like, that's why I've studied it for 30 years. It is the most interesting thing that I've run into. It's like, you cannot get somebody to stop. And because the addict in me doesn't know that I'm an addict. That is the main symptom of my disease. I don't think I have it, or I at least don't think I have it as bad as I do. And with somebody that's really out there, the only leverage we have is loved ones. And if the loved ones can start their recovery enough to stop enabling, that pain is usually the only leverage you have with addicts. So thanks, Scott. I know you know that. Please don't bow out of that business too much. We need you out there, brother. So anyway, thank you for being here today. Why don't you, as we kind of wind down here, would you go ahead and say how people can get a hold of you? To that little workshop that you just did on interventions was like, I want to capture that. And anyway, so how can people reach you, Scott?
The best way to reach me is through my email. It's Scott B, SCOTTB, at BCM, like Baylor College of Medicine, .edu. Scott
Nice.
B at bcm.edu.
All right. Thank you, Scott, for being here. Actually, next week we're going to bring Scott back. He's going to give us a little master class. Can you do a master class on 12-step recovery? We're going to get a master class on the 11th step, which is about making contact with our higher power on a regular basis. And so thanks for being here, Scott. Nicole, if you're still with us, would you mind coming on and letting folks know what we're up to here again at Deep Waters and how to reach us?
Yes, thanks, Bob. Thank you, Scott, for telling your story. Love listening to it.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah, Deep Waters Recovery. Would love to hear from you. We are an advanced recovery and healing experience for women and men. It's a 10 hours per week online program. We have 3 groups a week. You can reach us at 512-677-7847. That's our direct admissions line. I will be on the other end of that. Our website is deepwatersrecoverycom. We post weekly blogs from our community. Our podcast, The Recovery Crew, comes out weekly. You can follow us on all the social media sites, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And if you would like my email address, my direct email is admin@deepwatersrecovery.com. That's ADMIN@deepwatersrecovery.com.
Nice. We consider this a movement that has 3 components to it. We're recover, find out where the dependencies are. What am I leaning on, and start getting some help with it. Right. So we all have to learn how to say, "I need help. I need help." Guys like Scott taught me how to say that. That's not what I was taught. I never say I need help. That's what I was taught. But that's where it starts. And then the other piece is to start healing from the stuff underneath the surface that's driving some of the behaviors that are creating a lifestyle that's not satisfying to me. And then when we do that in community, then we can launch into a life that's really meaningful and authentic and genuine to our own souls, right? That's what we're up to at Deep Waters. We have a 10-hour per week, 12-week program. We also, as soon as the world emerges, again, the Deep Waters Intensive is a face-to-face weekend, transformational trauma resolution weekend. Lots of opportunities here. We're so glad that you joined us today. Apparently, it helps if you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. So please do that. And thanks again, Scott, for being here. Thanks, Wes, for being the co-host today. And you're in the deep waters now.